Kai lived in a world obsessed with speed. It was a civilization defined by the instantaneous instant coffee, instant messaging, instant gratification. Success was measured by how fast you could go viral, how quickly you could respond, and how immediately you could make a profit. Kai, unfortunately, was a broken cog in this high-speed machine. He was constantly tired, constantly rushing, and constantly feeling like he was falling behind. He was a master of procrastination, not because he was lazy, but because the sheer volume of immediate tasks paralyzed him. His life was a series of starting sprints and stopping before the finish line. Every morning, he would promise himself discipline. Every evening, he would face the crushing reality of another day wasted on minor distractions. And urgent but unimportant demands. His anxiety was the soundtrack of his life, a constant low-frequency hum of what-ifs and should-haves. He saw his ambitious peers achieving small, quick wins, and his confidence eroded daily. He felt time was a cruel tyrant, always running away from him. One day, while working as a low-level programmer in a frenetic tech firm, Kai was tasked with a simple coding update job that should have taken an hour. He delayed it for 3 days. The task loomed over him, not because of its difficulty, but because of the mental weight he had assigned it. It became a monstrous symbol of his inability to start. The project eventually failed due to his delay, and he was fired. Standing outside the sterile glass building, finally hit his personal rock bottom. It wasn't the shame of being fired that hurt, but the profound realization. He wasn't failing because he lacked talent. He was failing because he lacked a functional relationship with time. He wasn't dealing with minutes. He was dealing with the immense psychological pressure of starting. He realized that the greatest barrier between him and his goals was not the complexity of the task, but the tyranny of the immediate demand. In his despair, Kai retreated to a quiet public library, the antithesis of the fast-paced world that had rejected him. It was there, amidst the heavy, slow-moving shelves of forgotten knowledge, that he found a peculiar, untitled manuscript. It was a philosophical text penned centuries ago by a reclusive scholar known only as the Keeper. The text spoke not of managing time, but of changing the nature of time itself. The core principle was revolutionary. Time is only fast when you chase the immediate. Time becomes infinite when you focus on the immovable foundation. The manuscript argued that true success comes from identifying the 1% of actions today that will create 99% of the future value, and then dedicating every saved moment to those foundational actions, regardless of the urgent noise around you. This was the first glimmer of light for Kai. He recognized the profound truth. His peers who achieved quick fame were built on sand, constantly needing external validation, while the Keeper suggested a way to build a fortress that needed no external noise. Kai made a solemn vow in that quiet library. He would stop chasing the small, quick wins that gave momentary dopamine rushes. He would stop responding instantly to every email and notification. He would become an alchemist of time. His goal was not to save hours, but to redefine them. He would dedicate his saved moments, the moments he usually spent scrolling, worrying, or procrastinating, to one massive, long-term project that terrified him but held infinite potential. He named his new philosophy the infinite hour, This was not just a productivity method. It was a spiritual commitment to patience and purposeful delay of gratification. He realized that the greatest power wasn't speed, but intentional slowness, the deliberate choice to ignore the fire alarms of the present for the monumental construction of the future. The first step was agonizing. Deleting his social media, turning off all notifications, and accepting the initial pain of silence and isolation. This was the painful but necessary separation from the high-speed world. Beginning his transformation from a victim of time to its master, Kai's first step was to formalize his vow. He created a schedule that was rigid, not in its contents, but in its structure. He designated a non-negotiable 2-hour block every single day, the infinite hour, dedicated exclusively to his massive, terrifying long-term project. This block was It was the temple where no urgent email, no trending news cycle, and no social notification was allowed entry. He realized that the world constantly tried to steal, not his time, but his focus. The infinite hour became his armed guard against distraction. During this time, the phone was physically locked in a distant drawer. The internet was strictly disconnected, and he would wear noise-canceling headphones, not necessarily for absolute silence, but to signal clearly to his own mind. This time is sacred and dedicated to creation. This was not about simply working. It was about achieving a state of flow, a psychological immersion so deep that the 2 hours often felt like an instant, yet consistently produced weeks of highly meaningful, deep progress. He learned the fundamental rule of the alchemist. The value of an hour is not in its duration, but in its density of attention. The commitment was easy. The execution was torture. For the first few weeks, the infinite hour felt like an eternity of mental strain. His mind, conditioned by years of instant feedback loops, from constant digital distractions, revolted violently. He would stare at the blank page, consumed by the gnawing physical urge to check his phone just for a tiny hit of dopamine, necessary to soothe the profound discomfort of deep, unrewarded thinking. This feeling, he discovered, was the procrastination itch, the painful withdrawal symptom of a mind addicted to the immediate and the easy. Kai learned that successfully fighting procrastination is not a simple battle of pure willpower. It's a strategic battle against neurochemistry and old ingrained habits. He introduced a brutal but simple rule: embrace the resistance. When the urge to quit or check notifications was strongest, he would verbally remind himself, the pain of this momentary focus is temporary, but the shame of wasted, unfulfilled potential is eternal. He consciously stopped waiting for motivation to strike. He relied solely on the brutal, unwavering consistency of the clock and the scheduled work. It was in this agonizing consistency that the first profound miracle of the alchemist of time occurred. He started finishing things. Kai deliberately began viewing time not as a flowing, rapid river he had to desperately navigate quickly, but as highly valuable raw material he needed to meticulously shape every minute spent during his infinite hour on foundational work study in complex, difficult theory, refining a core, difficult skill, or writing a detailed, long-term architectural plan was treated as a heavy, permanent brick in his fortress. He ruthlessly stopped criticizing the inherent slowness of the process itself. He learned that speed is the eternal enemy of architecture. The world outside was busy building quick, flashy wooden structures, easily built and easily burnt down by the next trend. Kai was building with stone, meticulously shaping each block, knowing that his final structure would stand for centuries. This massive shift in perspective was vital. He understood that his project didn't need to be perfect yet. It only needed to be consistently built. The phenomenal power of compounding began to work silently for him. One brick laid with deep focus a day doesn't look like much, but after a year, it's a strong, resilient wall. After 5 years, it's an impenetrable, self-sustaining castle. The world, represented by the urgent pings on his laptop, which he now only checked once, briefly, at the very end of the day, still beckoned loudly. His old friends wondered why he had abruptly disappeared. His peers actively laughed at his slow, deliberate, almost silent approach, focusing instead on achieving viral posts, shallow fame, and quick funding rounds. They taunted. Why are you taking so long? Why not just launch something small and fast right now? Kai, watching them from a distance, realized they were still trapped and operating under the curse of They sought the shallow, immediate applause of the crowd. He sought the silent, long-term approval of the future. He began to see their speed, not as true efficiency, but as deep fear of being left completely alone with their own difficult thoughts. Fear of the hard, slow, foundational work that truly separates the temporary from the timeless. He understood the final truth of this demanding stage. If you want to build something that lasts forever, you must first be willing to let the world forget you for a while. Kai chose the slow, intentional ascent toward profound mastery over the quick, slippery slope toward fleeting attention. As Kai dedicated himself more deeply to the infinite hour, his world did not applaud his discipline. It grew cold, distant, and intensely skeptical. The greatest continuous challenge to the alchemist of time was not the difficulty of the project itself, but the constant undermining pressure from the outside world. His old circle of friends, who were still chasing viral metrics and instant relevance, began to mock his slow, methodical process. You're building a dinosaur, Kai. They would sneer with misplaced confidence. The market moves too fast. Your idea will be obsolete before you even launch part 1. This widespread mockery was a psychological weapon, expertly designed to pull him back into the frantic, urgent, and easily consumable race of the immediate. Felt the intense and profound loneliness of the pioneer. He realized that when you commit to a profoundly long game, you often walk a solitary, misunderstood path. People confuse genuine silence with stagnation, and they mistakenly interpret depth for unnecessary delay. It required immense, unwavering internal strength to distinguish between valid, constructive critique and the impatient, reactive noise of a culture that fears anything that truly requires patience. He learned a hard, essential truth. If your vision is truly great and foundational, it must be complex and slow enough that the impatient cannot understand or appreciate its value. Understanding that complete isolation was psychologically unsustainable, Kai sought not a cheering crowd, but a few quiet, wise conspirators, but rather keepers of the long game, individuals who intimately understood the profound value of slow, deliberate construction. A retired architect, known globally for designing structures that lasted generations, and Master Lin, a Stoic philosopher who quietly ran a small, focused bookstore. They immediately became his invisible, formidable support system. Fralara taught him the critical beauty of the blueprint, spending 80% of the allocated time planning and refining the structure. Master Lin provided the necessary mental fortitude. The world is fundamentally designed to make you impatient, Kai, Lin observed sagely. Impatience is a crippling psychological debt. True wealth is defined by the ability to wait and work. Focus only on the compound interest of your discipline, not the temporary daily stock price of your ego. This small, essential inner circle acted as a vital buffer, shielding Kai from the chaotic energy of the outside world and reinforcing the profound validity of his chosen patient path, or the anxiety of being perceived as slow. To combat this, Kai developed the principle of non-reactivity. This principle was simple, yet revolutionary. Nothing that enters my awareness has the right to demand my immediate action, unless it is a literal, physical emergency. He created a profound psychological distance between the stimulus and his response. He mentally classified the world's urgent demands as mere flickering noise, unworthy of interrupting the slow, deliberate work of the alchemist. He understood that reactivity makes you a slave to other people's priorities, but non-reactivity grants you ownership of your time and mind. To solidify the principle of non-reactivity, Kai designed a practical framework, the great 3-question checklist he would mentally run through whenever an urgent signal threatened his focus. Is this demand essential for the survival of the project today? If the answer is no, the task is delayed. Does addressing this demand now generate lasting value, or merely temporary relief. He only chose actions that generated lasting value. Will I regret not doing this work in 1 year? Or will I regret interrupting my focus for this demand? He always prioritized the future over the present's fleeting needs. By applying the great filter, Kai ruthlessly pruned the non-essential from his schedule. His communication became slow, deliberate, and entirely scheduled. He checked email only twice a day. He refused to engage in group chats that devolved into debates. He trained his environment and his inner circle to respect his boundaries, teaching them, indirectly, that his delayed response meant a more thoughtful, higher quality response. He learned that saying no to 1,000 distractions is the highest form of discipline. As weeks turned into months, the external world still saw Kai as slow, but the internal mathematics of his discipline began to produce exponential results. This was the phenomenon of compound effort. The quality of work done during the infinite hour, uninterrupted and deeply focused, was 10 times higher than the scattered, anxious work done by his peers. He realized that the formula for success wasn't linear work equals output. It was exponential focused work plus time equals output squared. While his rivals saw only the initial slow progress, Kai was accumulating a silent, increasing advantage. His knowledge base, built brick by brick, became incredibly deep and interconnected. His skills, refined through daily intense practice, became unparalleled. He wasn't just working, he was compounding knowledge, compounding skill, and compounding conviction. The patience that was once his greatest pain had now become his greatest protective barrier. He found immense satisfaction in knowing that his progress was invisible to the quick-win crowd, yet unstoppable in its accumulation. He was building his success on a geometric curve, while the rest of the world remained stuck on an arithmetic line. Kai's lifestyle was a direct rejection of the chaos prevalent in the industry. He began to exude a profound sense of calm, not the absence of stress, but the presence of a controlled, powerful focus. His non-reactivity transformed his mental state. By choosing to not engage with the urgent noise, he preserved his mental energy, treating his attention like a finite, precious resource. He was like the eye of the hurricane. Everything around him was fast, frantic, and swirling. Yet, he remained stable, intentional, and moving only where he chose. He understood that the greatest competitive advantage in the modern, noisy world is simply patience and clarity. The alchemist of time had learned the most important lesson of all. True power is defined not by how much you can do, but by how much you can deliberately choose not to do. Just as Kai's foundational work reached a critical mass, still unseen by the public, but structurally sound, the external world delivered its biggest challenge yet. A massive, well-funded competitor named Thorne emerged. Thorne was the very embodiment of the instantaneous culture Kai had rejected. Thorne promised quick results, used aggressive viral marketing, and relied heavily on superficial trends and instant feedback cycles. Thorne's entire operation was a noise machine, demanding attention and spectacularly visible. The media instantly hailed Thorne as the future, praising his speed and his ability to deliver instant value. Thorne's massive, flashy debut was specifically designed to make every slow, foundational project look obsolete and painfully irrelevant. The juxtaposition was brutal. Thorne was everywhere, commanding headlines and millions of views. Kai was nowhere, quietly laying brick number 487 in his infinite hour. The arrival of Thorne created a severe mental crisis for Kai. He began to question his entire philosophy. Was I wrong to be slow? Is the market truly too fast for foundational quality? The pressure to abandon his slow, patient method and pivot to Thorne's hive's ability strategy was immense. His old anxiety resurfaced, fueled by the fear that he was dedicating his life to a project that would be outdated before it ever launched. This was the true test of the alchemist's discipline. Can you maintain your conviction when the opposite approach is temporarily succeeding? On a grand, visible scale, he sought counsel from his mentor, Master Lin, who simply asked Kai, is Thorne selling a fortress or a fireworks show? Lin reminded him that fireworks are bright and instantaneous, but they leave only smoke and silence behind. A fortress, built slowly, will stand long after the fireworks are forgotten. Kai decided to look past the glare of Thorne's success and analyze the foundation of his competitors' noise machine. Using the principle of the infinite hour, he dedicated time to deep, non-reactive study of Thorne's product and structure. He discovered the critical flaw.